This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
We are talking with Detective Jason Howe today. Jason, I know your big game, if you will, or one of the areas that you are very well versed in is fingerprint examination and forensic evidence. I want to ask you, we've heard a lot of forensic evidence information coming out in the trial of Lori Daybell in the last week or so. What's been standing out to you this far as a detective?
Well, some of the forensic evidence that ties her directly to the scene, finding her hair on some of the adhesive that was used to wrap the bodies, apparently, that is pretty incriminating evidence, at least in my realm. So it kind of shows her participation in the actual, at least covering up the murders with hiding and burying the bodies. So that was pretty important to see come to light there.
I want to ask you about that specifically because, and I've said this to other folks, I'm curious to get your perspective as a detective. I know if I went to the junk drawer in my house and grabbed the roll of duct tape, if it's been sitting there for a while, it's going to have all sorts of little sticky things on the sides of it from years of use or being there and being touched. I wouldn't be surprised, quite honestly, if there was, and I'm bald, but one of my hairs stuck to that duct tape somewhere. Is this, what is the likelihood that this hair of Lori is there because she was there at the scene of this or because they were using duct tape from a junk drawer?
Well, I think you have to think about evidence as being very minuscule in some cases. We're dealing with things that aren't always visible to the naked eye: DNA, hair, fiber evidence, and it can be transferred multiple times. That you can have secondary and tertiary transfer, and all forensic evidence has an innocent explanation, no matter how damning it is. So it proves that her hair was in contact with the tape. But when you take the small pieces and put them together, you're kind of building a puzzle. And I think in this case, it's alarming that hair was found in that particular strand of tape that was used to cover up the body. So, I think when you take that into context with everything else, her involvement with Daybell and her alarming behavior that had concerned the other family members, and the fact that these are her children that are missing, I think you start building a picture of someone that is directly involved in murder.
And it's not a piece that stands alone in a vacuum either, obviously. There's a lot. If we're just trying her on solely a piece of hair on duct tape, I don't know how well that would stand up. But when all the pieces of this puzzle come together, you see a much more detailed look of what she was involved in, allegedly, and just how close she seemed to be. But how it's all being justified by religion. And this belief that these people were zombies, or that at least is the claim that, she believed these people were zombies. What's your take on her overall? Is this something where she truly believed these things? Or was it a convenient, although it be bizarre, cover for her just wanting to get her way and get the kids out of her life and do whatever she wanted to do?
A lot of that's going to be based on her prior history. I think, honestly, that there is probably some mental health there. I don't think that forgives the fact that she had murdered her own children. Unfortunately, the standard for using that as a defense is very high. I mean, she still did something she knew was wrong. Now, whether that was based on the belief of zombies or not, I think there could have been some issues going on where she truly believed some of those things, but that doesn't relieve her of her parenting obligation and the fact that she still knew that she was doing something wrong,
sure,
even if there was some mental health involvement.
Yesterday, there was some testimony from one of the witnesses, one of her former friends, Audrey Baratario, who had stated, when questioned by the defense, that at one point, Lori had said something to her of the effect of, not everyone is as trusting or something of that as you are, Audrey, and then threatened to murder Audrey, cut her up, and bury her, allegedly, where no one would find her. What is your take on that one? That to me, it was very, it was a bombshell to be dropped, because thus far, Lori has not in any sort of context from any witnesses, directly threatened anybody in that sort of way. It's always been very veiled, very much, well, they're demons and this or that, not literally, I'm going to cut you up and bury you. I'm curious if this plays along with the image of Lori Daybell, in your opinion, or if maybe this witness was telling a bit of a tale.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of testimony that has come out from witnesses that talk about her idea that she's, this grandiose religious person. She has very high thoughts of herself, and
Sure.
maybe she believed that she could get away with this. She was around a lot of death and destruction there in the last couple of years. And unfortunately, maybe she just realized that she could get away with it.
Nothing would surprise me at this point. When I first read about that yesterday, and then I actually heard the audio of the testimony, my opinion changed a little bit. Yesterday, I was very much like, I don't know, this almost sounds like even out of character for Lori Daybell, which is a high bar to get to. But then hearing the voice, hearing the testimony itself, there's something about an individual's testimony in their own words that you can either get the vibe of they're telling the truth, this is truly what happened to them, or they're telling a story. I'm assuming that that's something that you have some experience in as a detective when questioning individuals.
Yeah, and it's from the witnesses and the interviews that we conduct. We do them a lot of time in what I call the box, but we have an interview room and it's recorded, and you pretty much start off with that gut feeling, much like a parent would have with their child when they lie to them.
Yeah.
So it's really just normal behavior to pick up on deception. But sometimes we expect people to lie to us. The interview room is a place where we expect to get lied to, and sometimes we want people to lie to us, and we build our case around the fact that they're being deceptive.
Sure.
We don't go into the interview room without having at least some evidence to bring that person in. So sometimes we have evidence from the scene, we have fingerprints, we know what people have touched. One case that stands out to me that I worked on recently was one where I lifted a fingerprint at a burglary, and I had my suspect identified. So when I brought him in, I knew he was going to lie to me. So I asked him specifically about that house. Have you ever been here? Have you ever touched this? And just slowly walk him into deception after deception. And ultimately, we get to the point where he gets the bad news that, hey, unfortunately, we have your fingerprints and we know you were there.
Uh-huh.
And then that's when he asked for his lawyer, which was probably a good decision on his part.
Sure.
But, we sometimes expect these lies to take place in the interview room. So whatever, it's always good to have some evidence on hand before you go in asking questions, because, again, the evidence speaks for itself. We use it in a lot of ways to determine what's truthfully happened at a crime scene, because the evidence speaks for itself.
And with Lori Daybell, there doesn't seem to be much that it's not a possibility. It's just
absolutely not. And especially, again, when you start seeing the forensic evidence tied into that, I think she had a very big role in the death of these children.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
with Tony Bruschi.
Detective Jason Howe, thank you for your insight into that. Hey, if you want to get the show ad-free, keep up to date on all of our conversations, interviews, courtroom audio, press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of it. If you want to get it ad-free, you can do that through Apple Podcasts right now. Do check that out. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.